Carmax is in a serious crisis. Buyers are underwater and delinquency rates are up. So where does the connection be drawn? Obviously, in this last year, people have been overpaying for a lot of vehicles. A lot of reasons people have wanted these vehicles is because the time was right, there were shortages, they didn't have enough money, lending rates were high, inflation was climbing. It was all over the map, but people wanted their vehicles. Whether they needed it or wanted it was always debatable, but people got into loans, car loans, that they often couldn't afford, and they often found themselves in a position where they were underwater financially. In November, car buyers faced a record level of negative equity in their vehicles, $6,054 to be precise. And that was the highest since 2020. Now, what does that mean? That just basically means you're underwater. That means you've got more money going out for a vehicle that has less value. So in other words, a vehicle's worth 10 grand because of depreciation, but you still owe $15,000 on the loan. That's negative equity. On top of that, since early 2022, used vehicle prices have plummeted, down about 20%, which left many Americans and buyers in general way over their head and underwater. Now, unfortunately, with these interest rates that are still climbing, the fact that there's less buyers, there's becoming more inventory on the market, values of used cars as we're seeing them clearly in a lot of the auction houses, a lot of dealers are not picking those vehicles up, so prices are driving down. That's where it's happening. That's where it starts, and the lagging effect is on the retail market. People aren't buying like they were a year and a half ago. As a result, values are dropping, interest rates are hovering or still rising, and it just means people that got in too high are facing this massive crisis where they're underwater and they're faced with this major depreciation as well as a plummeting value in their vehicles. Now, would you believe auto loan debt is literally the third largest debt consumer? Really only follows mortgages, which everybody knows that's the largest expense in your lifetime, as well as student loans. A lot of people go to university, college, they rack up the debt. That only marginally leads the vehicle loan debt. And all of this collectively shows $1.595 trillion of debt across America is where they're at today, which basically adds up to about 9.2% of the total consumer debt in North America. Well, now Fitch Findings also says there's a really alarming rate. The rate is delinquencies. And in other words, they measure it by, say, for example, 60 plus days delinquency. In other words, you're not able to make your payments. Sometimes you can work out negotiations with your bank, extend loan terms, and get it extended out. But the fact remains, it's not always defaulted, but it does mean that a lot of people are just late on their payments, and over 60 days is in a rough place. A really troubling statistic is in 2023 September, about 6.11% of those loans made it over 60-day delinquency. Not only that, even in October, it was still at about 6%. Would you also believe the Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index actually indicated that values dropped in 2023 November by about 5.8% since last year at the same time. And if you track this on a month-to-month barometer, you basically expect 2.1% month over month. Also, since early 2022, used car prices have literally taken a nosedive down about 20%. Which shows that any of those buyers that bought those used cars or new cars and are still holding on to them from that time outside of that time window till today are literally holding on to a failing, sinking rock of an asset. And we know it only just gets uglier from there. You know, deep subprime borrowers, clearly some credit struggles between 300 and 500 credit score, clearly can see as much as 21 or 22% interest rates on their loans, and they'll never get out of that. They basically have to default or walk away from it, and that's unfortunately what people are starting to realize. They'll never get away from this. So they're just making those hard decisions. Now, we all know that Carmax is a really strong indicator, strong barometer as to the rest of the automotive industry, particularly in the United States. Now, Canada doesn't run Carmax because the United States is one of the largest car markets. Carmax indicates directly what's going on outside of Carmax and the industry as a whole, particularly where we're talking about loans as well as used cars. So what Carmax is experiencing today is clearly a strong indication as to what the rest of the industry is starting to see. So Carmax fortunately does have an update in terms of their financials on December 21st. We're going to hear a little bit more about that on that day. However, for the time being, the street's consensus estimate as to share prices are about 43% earnings, down about 3% from the year before. So even at Carmax, estimates for their quarterly earnings overall are expected to be down 4% to about $6.3 billion. Boo-hoo-hoo. But it is an indication that I know they're making money, but it is an indication that all things are on the downslide, and people that are holding on to these vehicles that they overpaid for 2 years ago are finding themselves underwater, and potentially delinquency is at their front door. Hope that helped everyone right there. Be sure to check that. Ford, what's going on with their truck and the crisis? Is there a future? You'll love that video, very popular. Hope to see each and every one in the next one. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.